My people have been tending that garden plant for longer than most folks in the modern world have been arguing about cholesterol numbers, and not one of us reaches for a pill bottle first. I need you to stay with me here, because what I'm about to tell you took my own father a full lifetime to teach me, and I almost walked right past it the morning I finally understood it. Here where I live, in our little settlement tucked between the hills of Lancaster County, high blood pressure is not the quiet, invisible killer it is out there in the English world. Among our neighbors, our elderly, our grandmothers who lived past 90 carrying their own firewood, it simply did not dominate life the way it does for so many of you watching right now. And I believe, with everything my father and his father taught me, that the reason sits right outside our back door, rooted in the dark soil of the garden we tend every single spring. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking this is going to be one of those stories where somebody from the old ways waves their hand and says, "Eat better and walk more." But that is not what I am here to tell you. What I am about to share is far more specific than that and far older. And if you give me your time today, I promise you will leave this place with something real, something you can hold in your hand by tomorrow morning. But first, before we get to the plant itself, I need you to understand why blood pressure became such a crisis in the first place. Because the story of the plant only makes sense once you understand the thing it is quietly undoing. In the English world, nearly 1 in 3 adults walks around with blood pressure that is too high. 1 in 3. And most of them are managing it with a pill they were handed at a doctor's office visit that lasted 11 minutes. My own neighbor, a good man who moved out to the English world when he was young, came back to visit us some years ago. He was on 2 different medications. He told me his doctor said it was just part of getting older. I remember sitting on the porch with him that evening, watching my father, who was 81 at the time, walk back up from the lower field without so much as stopping to catch his breath. My neighbor looked at me and said, "Amos, what does your father know that my doctor doesn't?" And I said, "It's not what he knows, friend. It's what he never stopped doing." That evening changed the way I thought about what we have here and what the modern world gave up without even noticing it was gone. Now let me tell you what we actually do every day, because the plant alone is not the whole picture. The plant is the final piece, and it matters enormously, but it sits on top of a way of living that prepares the body to receive it. I want to make sure you understand that what I share here is the way our people have always lived. It is not medical advice. Every one of you should speak with your own doctor before changing anything about how you care for your body. I am Amos Byler, and I am telling you what my family has done for generations. That is all I am offering, and I believe it is worth more than nothing. The first thing I want you to picture is silence. Not the silence of a room with the television turned off. Real silence. The kind that has birds in it and wind through the corn and the low creak of a barn settling in the cold morning air. Here where I live, we rise before the sun most days. Not because someone told us it was healthy, because the work demands it, and the work has always been our medicine. Every morning of my life from the time I was a boy, I walked not on a treadmill inside a building with artificial light pouring down from the ceiling. I walked on uneven ground, carrying things, bending, lifting, moving the way a human body was made to move. And this matters for what we are talking about today, because movement, real, daily, unhurried movement, is what keeps the walls of your blood vessels from going rigid and stiff. I have heard that doctors in the English world now confirm this, that walking every day, the honest kind of walking, is one of the most powerful things a body can do to keep the pressure in those vessels from climbing. We were never taught to call it exercise. We just called it the morning. But here is what I want you to sit with for a moment, because this is the part that might surprise you. It is not only the movement that matters, it is what happens to your body when you stop moving. In the English world, a person sits in a car, sits at a desk, sits in front of a screen, sits down for every meal. By the time the sun sets, a body has spent 15 or 16 hours in a chair. Our people do not do that. We cannot. There is always something to tend, something to carry, something to fix. And I believe that constant, gentle movement throughout the entire day, not 1 hour at the gym followed by 14 hours of stillness, is one of the reasons you will not find many of us with blood vessels that pound and strain against themselves. But now I need to tell you something that surprised even me when I finally put the pieces together. And this is the part of the story where I ask you not to go anywhere, because we are getting close to the plant, but we are not quite there yet. And what comes next matters just as much as the root and the berry themselves. You see, the second thing our people do that the English world quietly stopped doing somewhere along the way is eat without fear and without confusion. I do not mean we eat perfectly. I mean we eat simply. My grandmother, God rest her, grew or raised almost everything that came to our table. There were no packages with long lists of ingredients on the back. There was no syrup made from corn hiding inside a sauce. There was no oil that had been squeezed and heated and chemically adjusted to sit on a shelf for 2 years without going bad. There was meat and bread and vegetables and the occasional sweetness of real honey in a jar. That is it. And I believe this matters deeply for the blood, because when you feed your vessels real food, the kind that still looks like what it was when it grew, they stay supple and responsive. They do not harden the way a tube of old rubber hardens when it has been soaked in chemicals for too long. The English world now spends billions of dollars every year trying to undo with medication what the modern food supply did to the body in the first place. And I do not say that with anger. I say it because it is the honest truth of what I have watched happen in the world outside our fence. Now, if you have been watching this channel for any time at all, you know what I believe about the things that grow in the ground. And I am going to ask you, before I show you the plant, to think for just a moment about your own garden or your own windowsill or your own back porch. Because the habit I am about to share with you is not something you buy in a store with a credit card. It is something you grow or something you find at your local farmer's market, still smelling of the earth it came from. It is humble. It is ordinary looking. And it has been sitting in our gardens and in gardens across the old world for centuries, doing quiet work that most people in the English world are only now beginning to understand. Right around the middle of this video, I want to say something to those of you who have been watching and finding this useful. Stay with us here. There are more of these conversations coming, conversations about the way we sleep, the way we carry grief, the way we care for each other. When the body begins to slow, if that sounds like something you want to be part of, stay close to this channel. We are just getting started. Now, let me tell you about the plant. In our gardens, between the rows of beans and the stands of sunflowers, there grows a bush that most English people drive past without a second glance. We call it by its old name, hawthorn. Crataegus, if you want the Latin that nobody uses in our kitchen, it is a thorny, rugged plant with small red berries that come in the autumn and tiny white flowers that open in the spring. My grandmother made a tea from the dried berries and flowers every single morning for the last 30 years of her life. She lived to 93. She did not die of her heart. She died of a cold winter and old age, the way a person ought to go when they have lived a full and honest life. Now, before you think I am telling you that hawthorn is a cure for anything, I am not. I will never tell you that. What I am telling you is what our people have always understood and what the world of outside medicine is now beginning to look at more seriously. That hawthorn has a long history in folk medicine for supporting the heart and the blood vessels. Generations of our grandmothers understood something about this thorny bush that did not require a laboratory to observe. They watched their husbands and brothers and fathers who drank the tea live long and work hard. They watched the berry dark brew sit on the back of the stove every morning, and they kept making it because they could see with their own eyes that it seemed to matter. The way hawthorn appears to work, as best I can understand it in plain words, is not by forcing anything. It is not like a pill that tells your blood vessels what to do. It is gentler than that, the way a good conversation is gentler than a command. The plant seems to help the vessels relax and stay open, to support the easy flow of blood from the heart outward, so the heart does not have to push so hard. That is the old understanding, and for many of us who grew up with it as simply another thing on the morning table, that understanding was never something we had to argue for. It just was. Now here's the part I want you to hold on to, because this is the full picture, the one that changes things. My father used to say that no single plant carries the whole answer. That is a kind of arrogance, he said, to think that one root or one berry can do the work that a whole life is supposed to do. The hawthorn works, he believed, because it is the final layer on top of the movement and the simple food and the sleep that comes when you have truly used your body in the daylight and have nothing heavy on your conscience when the lamp goes out. Sleep, by the way, is not a small thing when we are talking about blood pressure. I know the English world treats sleep like something to be compressed and optimized and fit in between screens and late meals. Here where I live, when the sky gets dark, we stop. The body needs the dark the way the roots need the cold. Deep, unbroken rest is when the vessels repair themselves and the heart finds its natural, quiet rhythm. To push past that with artificial light and stimulation every single night is, I believe, to slowly teach the body that it is always in danger, always on alert, and a body that thinks it is always in danger will keep its pressure high, because that is what a body in danger does. It braces, it tightens, it prepares. So what I am giving you today is not one trick. It is a picture of a way of life with a hawthorn sitting at the center of it as the old, honest anchor. And here is how our people use it as a daily habit of living, the way my grandmother used it and her mother before her. You take the dried berries or the dried flowers and leaves when they are available, and you make a simple tea, not a complicated preparation, not a powder in a capsule from a shelf. You put a small handful in hot water and you let it steep the way patience steeps into a person who has lived long enough to stop hurrying. You drink it quietly in the morning before the day reaches for you. You do this the way you would do anything worth doing, consistently, without drama, without expecting a miracle by Friday. And you do it alongside moving your body every day and eating food that still looks like food and sleeping when the dark says sleep. That is the whole of it, my friend. That is the thing that has kept our community generation after generation from the quiet epidemic that so many of you are living inside of right now. Now, this is wisdom from a life lived, not a prescription from a clinic. Talk to your doctor, show them what you are doing, let them see the whole picture. The hawthorn belongs alongside your care, not instead of it. And I say that not because I doubt what our grandmothers knew, but because I respect the weight of your health too much to be reckless with it. My grandfather lived to 96, and he never once owned a pill organizer. He had a garden, a body that moved from before light until after dark, a wife who made hawthorn tea every morning like it was just part of breakfast, and a life with enough peace in it that his blood never needed to pound against its own walls, just to keep up. That is what I want for you. Not his life exactly. I know you cannot transplant a Lancaster County morning into a suburb in Ohio, but you can take one piece of it. You can find dried hawthorn berries at a farmer's market or a reputable herb shop. You can steep them in the morning while the world is still quiet. You can walk after breakfast instead of sitting. You can eat one meal this week that has nothing in it your grandmother would not recognize. Small, honest, real. The English world calls it alternative medicine. We just call it living. Tell me in the comments, what is the one thing your body struggles with most after 60? Tell me honestly, because every answer I read shapes what I share next in this place. And stay close, because next time I will share the way we have kept our minds sharp well into our 80s and 90s, something the modern world forgot. The moment it decided that forgetting was just part of getting old.